Hey, everybody. How's it going? All right. We got a special guest in the studio today. She's a comedian, a musician, from grunge to black metal to psychedelic. Let's welcome the neon overlord, Steph Stigma, in the studio today.
Overlord.
Hi.
Yeah. How you doing, Steph?
Good. How are you guys?
The way the country's going, we're hanging in there.
Yeah, that gave me an idea for a new product I want to design called it's a dynamite helmet for ethical brainwashing.
Yeah. Explodes on command, right?
Yeah.
So you're a musician, a comedian. What's it like? Obviously, you play a lot of different genres. What made you get into music? What made you kind of pursue that path?
That started like at a really young age, like 4 or 5 years old, when I got my first little keyboard, and I just started picking melodies out by ear off the radio, and it just kept snowballing from there. You know, I went into like school choir and then like school band once that was offered to me, and then just kept picking up instruments, and it's just been like a obsessive compulsive thing. It's just something that like I have to do. It wasn't a choice to do it, you know.
So you weren't like a little child prodigy, or you were, but you probably didn't know it, or would you be considered that?
Some would say that, I guess, but I don't know. Like I when I was teaching music in LA, like I had a real prodigy. You know, she's like this 6-year-old girl that played multiple instruments and had already written an entire album.
Damn.
Yeah.
And probably learned it all on YouTube. Just kidding.
Did your parents encourage you with music, or was it just something you used to escape and go, okay, my parents are fucked up, I want to do something?
A little from column A, a little from column B. Yeah. My dad plays guitar, and so, you know, when I decided I wanted to pick up guitar, he just kind of handed me some books and some equipment and left me to it. You know?
Yeah.
And,
Find your own style.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, he never wrote music or anything. He just does a lot of like classic rock covers from the 70s, you know?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it seems like we all kind of have that in common. Like our parents are the ones that kind of influence us, but they don't really cater to us, or do they encourage us? It's just kind of like, hey, we did this. You do it and see what happens.
He encouraged me when he was around. Like he was a traveling salesman, so like we didn't hang out a lot when I was growing up. But he was a salesman for like JBL, and so like he always had like cutting edge gear and was going to NAMM shows that he'd bring me to sometimes. But cool. I started learning like home recording in like 1993 when he just dropped off a 4-track Tascam that he had on loan, like a show model. And was like, here's the basics, and you know, have at it.
Was there any like one musician or band that influenced you at that age as you were learning music? Was there someone that just like, wow, I got to do that, I got to be like that, or I got to sound like that?
9 Inch Nails was a big influence.
Okay.
But when I started my first band, like we didn't have any like synthesizers or anything, and I was playing lead guitar for that group. But the whole time I was like, how do I get that 9 Inch Nails sound? Like I didn't even know what to call it.
Yeah.
Hadn't heard the term industrial or anything like that.
Yeah,
so
it was so new.
He brought it mainstream. I mean, it'd been around since, you know, arguably like the early 70s with, you know, Throbbing Gristle and Genesis P-Origin.
And so you kind of get into that, let's say, industrial technical stuff. How does that influence you then into becoming the whole cyborg? Because obviously that seemed to be a theme for a long time in your musical style.
The cyborg persona started with Willow Wisp, actually. Because when I joined Willow Wisp, you know, it's like, well, everybody is like a character, and everybody's got their own style and color scheme.
Name,
you know, the Power Rangers of metal, like somebody called us once. I thought that was hilarious. And I was like, well, I don't want to do like, you know, I got assigned monochrome, like black and white. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's just typical black metal style. You know, I don't want to do just like the fucking Merciful Fate corpse paint shit. You know, like I wanted to do something different, and like thinking about like what something I see is like really evil. And so like the Borg from Star Trek came to mind, you know, just like assimilate, no feelings, you know, everybody's a zombie type deal. So it didn't even start in the context of doing like the electronic music and stuff that I carried it on with.
Obviously that carries on into your solo music, because obviously after Willow Wisp you didn't have to keep that going, but was it something that you were kind of like, oh, I you know, I like this?
I had kind of acquired my own little fan base of, you know, like people that were just into the cyborg, you know, like I remember one of our fans like snail mailing me, you know, like they were in high school and they snail mailed me like a hand-drawn portrait of me as the cyborg, and I thought that was like really cool. Like I'd never had that kind of attention, and so I was like, well, fuck, why bother trying to rebrand myself and start from scratch?
Mm-hmm.
It just kept evolving, you know, like the Neon Overlord album that's got like a whole narrative, you know, like I was like, you know, I want to make this character not just a two-dimensional stage thing, have a whole like backstory and mythos to it.
And I was jamming that earlier. I was thinking like when I hear a lot of electronic music or EDM music, it's hard for me to really get into it because it just kind of goes in one ear, not the other. It's just, to me, it's just background music. But with what you're doing is you are actually incorporating great melodies and some good arrangements, and I think that's what separates it from your typical electronic music that guys like me would be like, I'm not, you know, that's not my thing or whatever. But
right,
I really like what you're doing with it. And I think that's what's important is when you could take a certain type of music and make it, put your own stamp on it, you know.
Yeah. Well, it has a funky Herbie Hancock style to it.
Yeah,
right?
that's what
I've been told that. Like,
yeah, I did hear some 80s elements in there, which is like, you know, obviously anybody that taps into the 80s sound, it's like you're going to come up with some pretty good stuff, you know.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of saw like in LA, like there was, you know, they talk about, you know, they say history's cyclical, and like with musical genres and like fashion styles and all of that stuff, you know, just in like 40 years, I've seen, you know, like styles come and go and recycle. And so I was trying to catch on to like this growing trend towards like a resurgence of 80s and retro and, you know, chiptune and stuff like that. But I think I missed the mark by a few years. I think it was a little too ahead of the curve.
Yeah. So obviously you go from grunge, you go from Willow Wisp, which is pretty much, at that point, it was all just black metal, right? I mean, it wasn't... I would
hesitate to call it black metal because it really didn't have a lot of those traditional Scandinavian elements to it, you know, like...
Okay.
It was definitely more like progressive, like avant-garde and part because of the amount of discordance and tempo changing and, you know, like, you know, Tony's a fucking wild man. So it was just like, okay, this music doesn't make any sense, but I like it. You know, we'll just roll with it.
Yeah.
Because at that point I was already out of the band and Eric was already out of the band. So
right.
it was kind of like, you got the leftovers. No,
pretty much.
As I watched you drown, the song you guys were doing, 'cause that's the song I was doing with Tony before I left. And I noticed the arrangement was a lot different and a little bit more gritty and dirtier. And was there other songs like, I know were you doing the Anonymous by any chance?
No, I came in shortly after that album. We produced like a EP, like basically in my bedroom that never had any label support, and it's almost more of like a demo, you know. But that one's called Chameleon. And I actually
heard some bits of it.
Yeah, I actually got to write 2 songs on that one. You know, it's like,
okay, cool.
I mean, I wrote a whole bunch of shit, but you know, it's like fighting tooth or nail just to get, you know, one song in the lineup. You know,
whose idea was it to do that Motley Crue cover? What's it called? The song from
that was
Peter Payne.
Use It or Lose It. Yeah, that was Tony, and we also were on a Kiss tribute album. We did Creatures of the Night.
Okay,
and
yeah.
Like me and the singer MDMA were like we didn't like either of those bands. It was just like before our time, you know, we were the younger people in the band and it was just not our style, but then Tony and Forge
to the old school.
right. It was silly.
Cool.
It turned into something better in my head, at least, than what the originals were doing.
Tony has his musical genius, but at the same time, I know he can be, you know, I've worked with him, you know, friends with him for many years. He can be a bit difficult, but, you know, I love Tony. He's been a part of our lives for a very long time, but
he can be polarizing, but, you know, he's like a brother, and he's like, you know, he's that brother that like in the Sandman, there's destruction. He's brother destruction, kind of off
Yeah.
doing his own thing. Well, you know,
Right.
all of it.
So we understand your pain, I guess, is what we're saying.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting, like after the final incarnation of Willow Wisp that broke up, like it actually had broken up one time before, like the first leg of a tour, a 4-state tour we embarked on. After the first show, boom, like dissolved because of a stupid prank that Tony pulled. And and actually that was like right before I reached out to you, Eric, and I was like, how did you deal with this shit? Like, you know, it's just like having an existential crisis. Right. But a couple years passed and the dust had settled, and then he reached out to me again because he you know, wanted my specific stylings on the bass, and you know, after some time and convincing, you know, I was like, okay, we'll do it again. And then and then the second go with them was even better. And I mean, we were just gigging and like stacking bills, although like those bills never came to light. And when it came time to go into the studio, that money was gone and unaccounted for, and so everybody quit at the same time. But what happened after that is like the rest of the members of the band, like we all enjoyed working with each other so much that we started 4 separate bands simultaneously, but then all of us were in each other's bands. So like we took like 4-hour rehearsals.
Projects.
But so that's where For Borgs started.
Yeah, okay. That's what I was thinking about. Remember Creature Fest when it was Ace and Vinny and Bruce Kulick a few weeks ago? We're kind of like that. Like we got 3 former Willow Wisp members reuniting or uniting for all in the same room.
But all from different stages and all
from different stages, yeah.
Wow.
This is a history right here. Willow Whispery.
Yeah. So then that kind of forces you into the Porn for Borgs type of realm. So who played on that album with you? Did anybody else from the band was on that recording, or was that just all you still?
No, like our little experiment after Willow Wisp was kind of short-lived. We actually didn't do any gigs. We did like one performance for an investor and a producer, a guy who had worked with like the Rolling Stones and stuff. And but because of logistics, they passed on it, and then we just kind of scattered in the wind. So, so to answer your question, the album was all me, and I actually wrote it for a challenge called what is it, like the Overclock Challenge, where the goal is you have the month of February to write and record an album, or at least 30 minutes of music. And it's not like a competition; it's just like a motivate yourself type, you know. Just fucking do it. And so I did that.
Do that.
Like it definitely gets the juices going. And a little meth helped too on that. But like, so after
meth can't cure.
Right. Meth puts that pep in your step, you know, gives you that can do attitude, you know. It's like, yes, I can do more meth. So like after the month, I had all the architecture there, and like I had all the songs written, but I was like, you know, I don't want to put it out as raw as it is. So I spent the rest of that year just tracking and mixing. At one point, I had a catastrophic hard drive failure, lost about like over 600 hours of work, and had to go back and retrack a bunch of shit.
That sucks.
I had $1 for every album that like disappeared from existence from a catastrophic hard drive failure.
That's what they all say. Hard drive failure. Yeah.
Well, before that, it was like I lost a master tape once on the 101. I was moving and kind of last minute packing, ran out of packing tape, and had a box that wasn't taped up. And my uncle, who's helping me move, is like, "Well, we'll just put it in the back in the flatbed." And I'm like, "Well, we're going down the freeway. Isn't that a bad idea?" And he's like, "It'll be fine." And we're going down the freeway, and I'm watching that box like in the rear view, just with all of my intent, like just be okay, because I knew what was in there. And as we're going, I see the flap start go like this. I'm like, oh shit, no. And then I see the master tape slide out of the box like this. And I'm like, wait, hold on, we gotta pull over. And it's like, whoosh, just off onto the freeway. And cars driving over it. It was.
And so obviously you go from the Neon Overlord, and now you're in it's an EDM band. It's called the Solar Animals, I think, right?
It's not really EDM. It's more like hippie jam band, but it's one of those things. Like I don't like Motley Crue or Kiss. Like I don't like Fish or the Grateful Dead. You know, it's like, So like
that's okay. Neither do I.
Yeah, I don't know. They had something unique going on. You know, like with the flute, and like just
tall
kind of. So I came in. Like they didn't have a drummer or a keyboard player, and like I was like, well, I can do both with this setup, and so it's just kind of evolved into this. It's some hybrid. Like I don't know how to classify it. Sort of, like I guess like if you mix Nine Inch Nails with the Grateful Dead, then
cool.
Fish, then somewhere in the middle.
And that's the beauty of it. Just put the music out, let the people that listen to it, let them classify what they think it sounds like, and
sounds great. That sounds great in theory until you realize you can't market music that doesn't fit into a box.
Yeah, you gotta have some kind of genre name. Like, fuck it, I'll go with shoegaze.
It's all for passion. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
like Neon Born for Borgs, I always describe it as electro-industrial funk metal.
Oh, cool.
And so obviously you're currently playing now. You're playing shows, or you're just kind of jamming, or just.
Last show we played a hemp festival in Morehead City, North Carolina. Which incidentally, that city does not live up to its name. Mm-hmm. They should call it Less Head City or No Head City. So we did that, but we've been kind of slowing down on gigging because we're working on our first album, which I'm producing and engineering.
Now, when did you discover comedy? You're a stand-up comedian.
Right.
I checked out your stuff. You're pretty damn good.
Thank you. Yeah, like I've always wanted to do it ever since I was like 8 years old, and I saw Carlin on an HBO special, and I was like, "Oh my god, you can do that? That's a thing." I was just like,
off and make them laugh at the same time.
right. Get to use all those fun words that I wasn't allowed to say because gonna go to hell if you say the word hell. Like, wait, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah, like I always wanted to do it, but I've always been like a pretty shy person and introverted. Like, I didn't start getting comfortable around people until probably not until my 30s. And like after my last concussion and in a car accident and like led me from LA to here, I was 37. I'm like, oh shit. I'm almost middle-aged, and, I've always wanted to do this thing, so I might as well just fucking, I always joke, like, it took that last concussion for me to think that stand-up comedy was a good idea. My tragedy cup just started overflowing, so I just had I had to take it out on unsuspecting drunken strangers,
Now, were you originally from North Carolina, and you moved to LA and then moved back to North Carolina? Is that where you're upbringing?
No, I have family that goes back generations here, but I grew up in South Florida and then like North Georgia, where Marjorie Taylor Greene is from, that can give you an idea of what high school was like there.
She's fragrantly pissed off all the time.
If they were Jewish space lasers, why are they burning down Hollywood? Like that's doesn't even make sense. And I don't even know what a trans terrorist is. Like,
I know, right?
Forget the white power extremists trying to overthrow the government. It's us trans folk that are trying to.
She said they're looking to turn the whole world gay or turn all your kids gay.
Yeah, that's the plan, right?
With the lasers, it's all has to do with the lasers. That's
from Hollywood movies.
Trust
me, if your kid turns gay from watching two guys kiss on TV, he was gay in the first place. He wasn't gay from watching that on TV.
Right. Yeah, it's like gay people see cis people, or straight people like making out and having sex and all that on TV our whole lives, and like doesn't make us any straighter, you know?
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's like the logic.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of that, obviously it's a sensitive topic for most people in America, except for those people that have to experience it. Being transgender, does it feel like you have to constantly be the spokeswoman for an entire community because people are kind of ignorant about it? Or
well, yeah, no, I do get a lot of random questions, like I've actually made some right-wing Trump, Trumpers like double take and actually leave them thinking and with an open mind and realizing that they didn't know as much as they thought they did because they'd actually never met someone like me before.
Like based on ignorance, basically.
Right.
So you asked them what 2 + 2 was, or?
See, okay, so that's the thing. I think if we're gonna solve this whole polarization problem, I think talking shit and cracking jokes at the other side's expense doesn't do anything useful for the conversation. So I always offer the benefit of the doubt, and I find using the Socratic method of just asking leading questions rather than trying to force a perspective onto somebody. Let them come to their own conclusions, but you ask the right questions in a sequence, and they're going to come to the right conclusion if they're actually eventually thinking about it. Yeah. So I think patience and just compassion, in general, unconditional compassion for living things goes a long way.
I wish I had that, but
right.
I don't.
Take more psychedelics.
Take more psychedelics, right?
Yeah.
See, I go the exact opposite route. I'm like, fuck it. I know they're going to be a moron no matter what, so I'm going to run them down any way I can. No.
Well, I don't know. Like anybody.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, I know, but I think anybody is susceptible to propaganda. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It's not even an intelligence thing. It's just an immersion thing, right? And so I don't know, like going back to your question about do I feel like a spokesperson? Yeah, but I think that's because in a way I've taken it upon myself to be a spokesperson. I see a lot of members of the trans community that go on and get interviewed on the news or get in high exposure situations, and they're just spewing out talking points and it's the wokeism, too much wokeism. I mean, being woke at the beginning is a good thing, right? Recognize that there's inherent racial disparity, right? But it's been hijacked by extremism because there's extremism on both sides. And so when I see, and they always, I don't know, news media tends to pick some non-binary person, with a beard wearing eyeshadow, that has, sixth grade vocabulary to try and represent the whole community, we're some kind of diluted monolith of, it's just.
Well, I think maybe it's the people in Hollywood with the lasers that are forcing everyone to see people a certain way. Because I remember back in what used to bug me back in the 90s and 80s sitcoms is you would always see the long-haired guy as the dumbass, hey, how are you? And, he would be the long hair, the gothic guy, and be like, that's not who we are. That would always piss me off.
Otto
and
from
that's
The
just
Simpsons.
the way it's always been. It's like Hollywood just depicts, everybody as a stereotype, and that's what they end up believing. So
right, and like speaking of the trans stereotypes in media, were okay, so you got Ace Ventura, right? And the big reveal is that the villain is actually transgender, and since he made out with her, there's a whole montage of him puking and crying in the shower like somebody who'd just been sexually assaulted, and and then you have Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill, a transgender person whose only recourse to fulfill their self-identity is to murder women and steal their skin, right? And then before that, you have Psycho, right? Norman Bates, who whose feminine alter ego is a psycho killer, right? So that's been the popular representation of us historically.
So then it's all about feeling shame about who you are, who you truly are. It's just feeling shameful and then going out and murdering somebody because of it.
right. Well, always painted as predators and liars and, like...
Yes.
And honestly, like, the only reason it took me so long to come out was just fear. That was it. Fear. I've known. That's what I was I've known my whole life.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, when you did finally come out in that fear, what was that feeling like when you finally? Was it that liberating experience you hear about that people?
Oh yeah.
When they come out?
Like it's. I've never
huge weight of lifted off your shoulders.
Yeah, like this time in my life ever since. Like in transition, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And but it's like the first time in all my life that I've experienced like happiness, right? like up until then I was this like violent, angry, fucking hail Satan, fuck you, like, and I mean I'm still all about Satan,
Yeah, right.
But not the violent part,
right?
Next, Marlene Chater agrees on, transgenders are all Satan worshippers.
Yeah, well, look at what the Satanic Temple is doing on the legal front. In battling the encroachment of a theocratic overthrow of the government, the establishment clause is very important, so
if anyone's going to protect all of our rights, religion or whatever, it's going to be the Satanic Temple. It's going to be there to protect us all.
It's going to be Satan. Hail Satan! Thank you for protecting us, Satan.
Yeah. I've always liked that idea that. Anton LaVey's kind of a kooky character and a little like cheesy, but you look at when he started all of this, and the whole idea of
good philosophies,
right, and the whole idea of there's all of these horrible things in the Bible that are that's God's law, right? Like you're supposed to murder a woman in front of her dad's stoop if she's not a virgin on her wedding night, right? That's normal, right? I mean,
it's perfectly normal.
Right. Yeah,
is that from the Quran?
No. And actually, like about the whole
Bible.
Yeah, about the whole abortion thing too. It's interesting. It turns out the Bible does have an opinion on abortion. It's
really?
It's pro-abortion. There's actually passages. Yeah, there's like herbal recipes there's recipes for like herbal Plan B. There's like rights for priests to, perform during an abortion. And like one passage one passage says it's okay to abort a baby up to a month after it's born. Right?
Damn.
So it's like,
hey, that's our philosophy.
Yeah, that's my philosophy. I say 13 years old, man, should be like, the minute they start making bad decisions.
Well, see, I'm pro mandatory abortions for everybody.
Yeah, I know, right? Just wipe them all out.
Right.
Do you think things have gotten better for the trans community since is that why you were able to come out? Because of obviously it's gotten better over the last 10 years or?
Well, yeah, 3 years ago, that's what I thought. But over the course of the Trump presidency and then now with the rhetoric coming out of the GOP about groomers and just dehumanizing all of us, like labeling all of us as pedophiles. That's how genocides start, is by scapegoating and marginalized people and then dehumanizing them. And unfortunately, that's the slippery slope we're on.
There's always going to be an asshole in the bunch. I mean, that's never going to end, I don't think. But as a community overall, like let's say as a society for America, there is a lot more support for it openly rather than secretly.
Yeah.
So
I don't get any shit.
Hope?
Yeah, I don't get shit in my day to day, and I live in North Carolina, so it's kind of surprising. But I'm in a little like blue bastion in a sea of red, so it's like there's doing comedy, for example, like in some podunk areas outside of this little safe haven can be kind of dicey sometimes, but. It's hard for me to have a clear perspective on it because I live kind of an insular life. I don't participate so much in the trans community or the LGBTQ community, because it's like, because like we don't,
right?
Right. There's just because you have this one thing in common, like oftentimes that's the only thing, and that's not enough to build that's not enough foundation for a meaningful relationship or
yeah. It's like saying just because we smoke, we should be best friends. You know, hey,
right.
We're both smokers. Let's go hang out together.
Yeah. Well, if you work a day job and you have, you know, mandatory smoking breaks in a designated area, you are going to end up talking with the smokers more than the non-smokers. But but yeah, that doesn't mean you're going to invite them to your wedding, or you know.
Exactly.
Well, I watch a lot of movies and TV shows, and I noticed like in the past maybe 5 years or so, maybe it's been more prominent that Hollywood has been putting way more gay characters in, transgender characters in their TV shows and their series. Now, like sometimes they do it in a way where it's like, you'll get into a character and, you know, about 2 weeks later, maybe 5 episodes in, the character will say, well, it'll be a male. And he's like, oh, my husband, you know, so, oh, he's gay. And I'm always picturing like some redneck, like, oh, I was just getting into this show. Now I got to
just cut it off.
Like, damn it, they tricked me.
Like, I'm going to get on Twitter. I'm going to get on Twitter.
I really like that. Damn, he's gay. Shit.
But see, like the way that they that representation has changed is like in the past, like the gay character would fit a stereotype, and the whole crux of the character revolves around them being gay. Whereas nowadays, it tends to be like just like a passing detail that doesn't have any impact on the story.
It's just part of the
like
show.
any human would be part of any story of their life.
Right.
You encounter them, and that's the way it should be.
And I think that's kind of cool that they do that.
Yeah, like, I mean, I could make a lot of, like, assumptions and generalizations based on your guys' long hair and beards, right?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
stoned lumberjack, right? Like, that comes to mind. But then, you know, you're a drug counselor, and I don't think you chop wood professionally, so it's like...
Just on the weekends, just...
Glenn, your beard's just COVID beard, just like 1 year, it's just like...
Yeah, his beard goes so fast. Like I saw him a couple years ago, and it was like no beard, and like all of a sudden it's just like it's so fast how it grows.
It's funny. Like I think, like the image I was familiar with of you, Glad, was on stage, clean shaven, and in a dress, sitting cross-legged and playing the keyboards. Like
like Schroeder from Charlie Brown on the floor.
Right. And so it's funny, like when you guys are both in Willow Wisp, like androgyny was kind of like your deal, right? You know, like the gothic aesthetic and everything like that. But you know, now like you guys are like hyper masculine in appearance. Like was that?
But when I shave, I do put my makeup on.
I think it's just by happenstance, because I think I just look better. If I shave it off, I know I look ugly. So it's just a way to kind of mask my own identity. And
with me, it's a conscious thing because I gained a lot of weight, so I feel like the beard at least covers up my fat face.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm still trying to work on my weight, you know, like, we got to watch the calories. And,
right.
But when I do shave and I put my makeup on, I get my hair spiked out every now and then, take some pictures. And
living in Portland had nothing to do with it. So,
but I feel like I'm not playing shows anymore. So, and I'll probably never really play it again in a show because I don't really care to put a band together. But I just figure, well, I'm not going to get all made up for nothing, you know.
Right. Well, just consider it self-care.
I enjoy just writing music, put the music out, and just have fun with it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was saying how, like, in the 90s, when I used to get dressed up and walk down the street, at least once a week, somebody would, you know, if I'm wearing a skirt or if I'm in makeup, somebody at least once a week would yell at me, call me, you know,
I can say it, you know. Call you a faggot. That was a day-to-day. That was a day-to-day for me in the 90s, being a goth kid in the South. It was
the same. But that's what I'm saying. What's weird is in Hollywood, we lived in Hollywood, and this happened on a regular basis. So it's like you would think living in Hollywood, you know, it's supposed to be a big city. You know, people are supposed to be better.
It's Hollywood.
I was always hit up by gay guys when I catch the bus on Santa Monica Boulevard. I always have a truck pull over, ask me if I'm working. I'm like, no, you know, because I'm in my makeup and stuff and waiting for the bus after a night of crazy partying, and they'd be trying to pick me up and stuff. And Yeah, I almost went home with one guy because he looked pretty rich, you know. But I was like, nah, don't do it, man. You're just hungover.
Sugar daddy. Yeah. Yeah. He's like, I got cold beer in the fridge. Yeah. All right, sold.
I gotta pay my rent. Got a nice truck. I think I gotta pay my rent.
Yeah.
So I guess in that regard, I mean, things have gotten better, or people just don't want to waste their drink anymore and throw it on people. It always seemed to be a drink. I don't know why that was. Why do people have to throw drinks at you? I never
especially out of a moving car. That shit hurts.
Yes. A truck was with, like, the funniest part was me and Eric and I were walking home from a coffee house, and a group of like all these like 4 or 5 guys in the back of a truck, and they had like a big gulp, and they threw it at us, and I saw them, and I moved. And it hit Eric.
Oh, shit.
But yeah, why? They're always in the back of a truck, and it's always a drink. I don't know what that's about.
So back to that slur. Again, like I'll say, I mean, I don't want to fuck with your guys' algorithm. If you're like, okay, but yeah, like I use it
we
as
don't care about that. It was more out of respect. For you, so
I consider it like a reclaimed term. It's not, I never said it all of the time that I was being called it. And, the decision to start using it came with doing stand-up comedy, right? And but what's interesting was when I found out I was moving back to North Carolina, or moving to North Carolina back to the South, like that was my biggest fear, was like, oh shit, here we go again. Like day to day, I'm a faggot now, blah, blah, blah. And since I've been here, I've only been called it once, and it wasn't even in English, right? When I first moved here, I went to visit the Cherokee Reservation, which growing up, that was always kind of like my Jerusalem, because, I was raised to, honor my Cherokee ancestry and things like that. And so I'm hanging out the res, like having breakfast with my grandparents, and go outside to smoke a cigarette. And I'm sitting there, and a bunch of local construction workers, like big Cherokee guys, come out and into the parking lot. One of them looks at it's like, hey, points over at me and goes, Oswego. And they all start laughing. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Out of all the Cherokee I have to know, which is next to none, I know what that word means, right? It means two-spirit, which before colonization, like two-spirit was like, that was a blessing on your house if you were to have someone like us.
That before, yeah.
Right, but now it's been twisted into just another word for faggot. So
on top of everything else, Steph, you also have autism, from what I understand. Now, how does that work, being a musician and having the auditory, or like?
No, I think it helps. I think that's why I've been able to like pick up so many different instruments so easily, and like I experience music almost like a 3-dimensional topology. Like almost like if you see like a topological map, but then there's like color coding to it. Like I experience music like on like multiple sensory inputs, like a synesthesia type deal. Yeah. So for music, it's a big help. For comedy, it makes it a little tricky because like reading a room or making eye contact with the people in the audience, like it's like
social cues and
right. Yeah. Like I have a whole chunk of material on taking things too literally and not. Yeah, being socially aware, like maybe you guys can help me because you're neurotypicals, right? Like which is a bigger social faux pas? Speaking Chinese to the wrong kind of Asian, or telling a woman you just met that her transition's going great? Oh, shit. Like I've unfortunately done both of those things at the same time, and that's why I'm no longer a Walmart greeter. Yeah. But I mean, to be fair, that Filipino lady did have really big hands.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And she drove slow, right?
Okay, now this is getting off track.
Yeah, right.
But then obviously playing for Willow Wisp or playing live, isn't that like weird? Like would you have to wear like a certain type of earplugs? Like
the cyborg mask that I had on, like actually blocked out some sound. But no, the sound doesn't bother me because like when I'm on stage playing music, I'm kind of like in a disassociative state, right? Like I'm there, but I'm like spread out everywhere at the same time. Like it's like I'm not there in my body experiencing it that way. Like I'm connecting with the other musicians and with the music itself, almost as if it's like a physical thing that I'm swimming in. Like it, it's like for me, it's a religious experience. That's my temple. That's where I go to worship.
So then obviously it's a completely different or opposite experience being a comedian, because you have to be focused on the audience and the people around you versus escaping and just kind of being lost in the music, right? Or
generally you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Because you can't just tell a joke and hope it lands and then move on to the next thing. Like with music, you can just play a song, either people get it or they don't. But with comedy, you kind of have to be constantly feeding off the audience and right.
Well,
or
yes and no. It depends on what your style is. Like, a lot of the time I do just tend to like machine gun jokes, just like blam, 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 blam. Oh, you didn't like that one? Here's another one. And like I don't encourage audience participation. It's not that kind of show. Like when somebody heckles or like starts talking on their cell phone, it like breaks me out of my train of thought. And then I have to fucking publicly shame them into submission before I can get back to what I was doing. But the main thing, like because for the first while that I was doing it, I was like, I approach it a lot like music. So I would enter that disassociative state where, like my body's there and it's going through the motions, but I'm not there experiencing it in the same way. And, but once I quit drinking on stage, like that threw me back into my brain more. I mostly just like look like if there's a bunch of people in the front row that are just glaring at me because I, outed myself as trans, and they don't like that, and they're just like, I'm not going to laugh at any of this trannies jokes.
Which, in other words, they should just leave then.
Right. But yeah, that can get demoralizing. So then I'll look for the pockets in the room of people that are laughing, and then I'll just try and focus my attention there and ignore the fucktards, Well,
that was kind of what I was trying to express, is that, yeah, being a musician on stage, you kind of, when you see somebody in an outfit or when you see somebody dressed up, you kind of, okay, that's their thing. I'm going to listen to the music. Whereas comedy's a lot harder. I mean, that must be torture for you in a way. I mean, that's like,
well, I would say that's the biggest reason that it took me so long to do it, because you don't have the support of the backup band. Like you don't have like a drummer pounding like a hammer from hell, like people might be heckling the entire show. It doesn't matter. You can't fucking hear a peep from them. It's like, oh, you don't like it? Shut up. Yeah, like when you're on stage, and if you're not doing well or bombing, like you can hear a fucking pin drop, and you got like a crowd of people just looking at you like, all right, faggot, you better get funny real quick.
Except for us, I always had the one guy in front that was doing this, you motherfuck faggots.
You guys,
crowd, man.
Yeah. So one time I pushed him out into the crowd. I took my boot and I planted it in his chest. And I pushed him into the mosh pit, and he got his shit all fucking fucked up by the mosh pit. And he wanted to fight me afterwards. It was like, he wanted to fight me outside. I'm like, what the fuck? You just tried to fuck up my show. You want to fight me now?
Yeah, that's stupid. That's so stupid. Yeah. Did you guys ever get?
Hit Ibex
I was just gonna ask if you ever had shit thrown at you.
Oh yeah. When Tony had that big old cross, right? Tony had that big old wooden cross,
right, with the brain on it.
And so I think Tony kind of tossed it out into the crowd, and then some dude tossed it back onto the stage and knocked the Andrix out. And then I'm singing, and I look and I see Andrix is laying flat out on the stage. He just got this fucking big old wooden cross that's fucking nailed him. I was like, oh shit, he's dead. But he got up and he was fine. But yeah, and then another guy threw a bottle at Ibex. The same guy that was flipping me off, he threw his beer bottle at Ibex. And
oh shit!
But Ibex was so stoned and fucked up, he didn't really notice.
I think sometimes I was more dangerous to the other musicians on stage than the audience was. Like when I was a teenager, I'd go kind of crazy on stage, and I remember one time I was like swinging the mic stand around, and then I accidentally like hit a guitar player in the back of the leg, like cutting his leg open and just like pulled his legs out from under him, and he just like fell on his back, like, and he's like playing on his back now and bleeding on the stage, and hail Satan!
Hail Satan! Hey, so the magic question. Always wanted to ask this of a transgender friend and trans woman. Dave Chappelle, love him or hate him?
Love him.
Love him.
Yep.
So you're not one of the people that are supposed to be offended by the,
No, I actually watched the special instead of just reading some out of context snippets of his set, which that's not, I mean, like, Right. I enjoy it as a comedian first, right? Like being transgender isn't, my identity in like any real defining or meaningful way other than it's just how I,
who you are.
Right. It's like it doesn't determine how I think about things, right? Determine like my morals or ethics or any of that shit. I'm not gonna fall into some internet echo chamber and just like, repeating a cycle of outrage that's unfounded because it's working with, again, out of context information. Like the way I saw his last special was, it was a love letter to the trans community, right? He's talking about a friend of his that killed herself because, how her own community came after her. And
they basically turned on her. It's like, it was very sad, actually.
Yeah. And like, well, I've heard trans activists say like, he called himself a TERF, because he says, I'm Team TERF, but then goes on to, speak about being a TERF, like from a lack of knowledge of what it even is, really. Like, and it's like, I mean, I'm autistic and I could still understand he was being sarcastic, right? Like he was being satirical, and and I've worked with comedians like, big names, that know Dave personally and have known him for a long time. And they all say the same thing. Like, Dave doesn't have a hateful bone in his body. He is like one of the most genuinely kind people you'll ever meet. And, so that's where I stand on that. And like, I wouldn't say that about Ricky Gervais, but, I heard about like, I was a fan of his until some tweets he made like 14 years ago about, that were kind of transphobic. And I'm like, oh, really, man? That fucking sucks.
I saw his last special. I got that from him too, from his last special on Netflix I just watched.
Yeah, I insisted on watching it before drawing a conclusion about it, and it didn't bother me. Like he's like a troll. He just loves saying shit.
I feel like he tries too hard to be a troll. Like he just tries too hard to offend people.
Like his his whole Eskimo Chinaman bit, and like. And like the joke, he had one trans joke that I thought was really funny. Like some of it's like low hanging fruit, but where he's talking about imagining if he just came out as trans and underwent the hormones and operation, the whole shebang, but he's a lesbian because he's still attracted to women, right? And so he picks up some lesbian at a bar and they go back to their place and like making out, getting into it, and then she's like, you want to put the strap on? And then he's like, yeah. And then looks down and putting it on and is like, oh, shit. Wait a second. And, I thought that was funny. Like, because I've had that same thought. Like, people ask, have you had the surgery? And it's like, well, no. Like, I mean, not everybody gets dysphoria there. I still like to use it from time to time. Like I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So it's like
a backup plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Like a real an all natural strap on.
Yeah. I mean, I date cis women too. Like I'm pansexual or bisexual or whatever. Like I don't care about your flesh suit,
right? Yeah. Whoever you're attracted to, you're attracted to. Shouldn't be like it'll have to be a label to it or anything.
Right. It's personalities for me first, but the outrage, the outrage from activists, I think is it's a lot of like virtual signaling, dog whistling, like I just want those internet points. Give me that sweet dopamine hit of causing outrage and get people to pay attention to me. And it's like more than half the time, people are getting offended just because somebody's talking about the subject, right?
Yeah.
You're not trans, you can't talk about it. You shouldn't talk about it because you're not trans. And it's like, well, you got to leave some room for people to understand it, right? And you can't reach an understanding if you can't communicate about it. So it's just fucking, it's like snake
so obviously
eating
that must be overall a society issue, because that's pretty much the way it goes with whether it's people on the hard right or the hard left. Everybody just wants fucking attention. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You say whatever you say, no matter who you hurt, just so that way you get the points, you get the likes, you get the follows.
Yeah,
right.
Get the viral video.
Well, and the algorithms perpetuate that. Because they're not built with any sort of moral distinctions about things. They're just built to optimize traffic. That's it. They just scour, billions of bytes of data, and they just find the patterns that create an optimum solution. And it turns out people like being pissed off. So that's how we got here.
I think humans in general, our brains are wired to figure out patterns and make them work for our own individual selves. So obviously we're playing with the AI, we're playing with the algorithms to we're playing right into it. And
it's a negative feedback.
It's our own fucking fault.
Yeah, it's a negative feedback loop.
Exactly.
Like, actually, the comedian Ari Shafir did an experiment with YouTube, like created a fresh account and only watched videos of puppies. That's all he did. And eventually, like in pretty short order, that's all YouTube was serving up. Videos of puppies, right? Yeah. So like, it spits out what you feed it. Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, but I think the difference is that you have to watch like 30 or 40 videos of puppies to get your feed full of puppies, but you only have to watch one asshole or racist or whatever, and all of a sudden you got a million in your feed.
Yeah. Well, that same thing happened with me, right? Because I don't want to be operating from an echo chamber. So, like I'll watch, Ben Shapiro or Tucker Carlson or some of these, extremists. And, but in doing so, just trying to research now, my targeted ads, I keep getting ads for that fucking documentary, like What is a Woman? Where like, where it's this right-wing conservative guy going around asking everybody to define what is a woman, as a case against, trans women, right? Like, people don't know what a woman is anymore, and that's bad, right? And it's, but it's like every fucking other advertisement, it's like, what is a woman? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, I'm finally getting settled into this life that, like this big change and, getting comfortable in my own skin and feeling, like I pass pretty well out in public. Nobody's looking at me funny. And, but then now it's like my computer is questioning the validity of my identity every 15 minutes. Right. Sitting here like,
well, all I have to say is if you're on TikTok, never leave your phone and go to the bathroom when it's on an erectile dysfunction ad, because then that's all you get for the next 6 months. Because it came up and I set it down. I went to the bathroom and it went on loop for like 4 or 5 minutes, and the next thing I know, I'm like, why am I getting all these commercials on this? Like, what the fuck is this?
What is it trying to say about me?
I know I'm getting old, but I didn't think I was that old yet.
Right. That's funny. Like, I wish there was just like an opt-out option, right? Like, I don't want the algorithm giving, like, I mean, I guess there are ways to like set up what data you share, but to a limited extent, right? I wish there was just like a off switch to go back to the Wild West internet of the 90s, where it's just like, you didn't know what the hell you were going to find, it's like, look at this.
CD, we had to put in a CD to get on the internet.
AOL. But it's, what is this, like some random GeoCities page with like a dancing Jesus and some rainbows flying around? And it's like, okay, I don't know what this is supposed to serve, but this is just somebody's individual expression of themselves, like just, screaming out into the void with random gifs,
And if you happen to like it or enjoy it, you shouldn't get 10 million exactly like it 10 minutes later. So.
Right. Same with like MySpace. I miss MySpace because it was just like the freedom of control you had over, like, that's how I learned how to code in HTML was, cutting code on MySpace. Now everybody's on Facebook. I think I
learned a little bit.
Facebook, you just got that ugly blue and white design. You can't do anything. Like, you can't make it feel like yours because it's not. It's theirs and you're theirs,
no,
right?
They own it
Yeah. Well, they own you
they
too.
Own your ass.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You can't say anything without getting suspended. You say one little word, like take it out of context. The bots are going to take it out of context. And
you can't be racist, Eric. You can't be racist on Facebook. They don't allow you freedom.
You can't be homophobic or racist, man.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I actually got banned from a subreddit for being a transphobic fascist.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. No shit. They told me to go watch more Fox News, and I'm like, what? Like, okay, hey, I'm a trans woman, right? And B, like, I'm so far left, like, there's not even a political party that represents my views, right?
They thought you were just pretending to infiltrate their community. That's what it was.
I do have a conspiracy theory about that. I think there are some conservative, like family first type anti-LGBT PACs and stuff that I think there's a long game campaign to spread misinformation and discredit the community. And I think that's where all of these micro identities, all these 1,000 genders thing came from. It's like 1,000, any reasonable person looks at that and goes, "The fuck are you talking about?" These trannies have gone crazy, and it's like I think that's it. I think that's a psyop. I think that's an intentional plot to discredit.
100%.
Planet of the trannies.
Hey, that's the goal.
I think it's more of a. I actually think it's more of like a media thing that they do that to create more stories about this whatever subject is hot at the moment. I think it's not necessarily stupid Christians doing shit to infiltrate stuff. I think it's more media people than anything else to create a horrible story so that way they have something to run with.
Right.
Fear of a tranny planet. Remember Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet?
By the way, that is
a tranny planet.
That word is a slur, just so you know.
It is, right?
Yeah, it is. That's our word. I mean, if you want to use faggot, go for it, because, you can speak from experience.
Okay. Matter of fact, just using those words just in general, just to talk to somebody like that, and there's no way I would use that word tranny or faggot on anybody just because.
You just did, Eric.
Yeah.
Well, I was making an off what do they call off-collar joke. I was making an off-collar.
Tell that to Joe Rogan.
Doing a Joe Rogan moment.
But again, the whole video of him saying the N-word over and over and over, it's fucking horrible. But at the same time, every context of him using it is him talking about the nature of language and the etymology of words like that and the weight that they carry and why do they carry weight differently than other words, and trying to break it down and analyze it, not just making jokes about it. But I'm not saying that.
It wasn't like he was just sitting around saying it out of nowhere.
Right.
At the same time,
it's still not appropriate by today's standards. Shit changes.
But I think also too, I think it's wrong to some degree to pull up people's stuff from 10 years ago, or I hate when they bring up something that somebody said from 20 years ago, because everybody grows, everybody evolves to some degree, some faster than others.
Absolutely.
But they shouldn't be chastised for something that they said 5 or 10 years ago if they're being a better person today.
Right.
Yeah.
If they're not, then fuck them, throw them to the wolves.
Right.
Because we all make mistakes. We're all, like you said, we're all kind of brainwashed by society and what we're surrounded by. And, we say stupid stuff.
Right.
Some people just try to be funny. And
people should be allowed to make mistakes and to be forgiven. But would you extend that same policy towards politicians? Like, for example, like Joe Biden, who's been in politics for more than a generation, would you say it's acceptable to like hold him to the same standard as when he was vocally against busing and integrating interracial schools and stuff like that? Like, should politicians still be held to a higher standard?
Obviously, I think anybody with a job in a that was voted in, and you're held to a higher standard when you're a public figure. Mm-hmm. I would, as far as like, obviously, if you're a public figure being like a musician or an athlete, it's not the same as being a politician who's responsible for other people in their lives. Like an athlete, they have like an 8th grade education. So, you can't expect them to be, too bright about certain things. That what they do is they're an athlete. That's what they're good at. A musician, they're, as the stereotype goes, you're a fucking drug addict, the crazy person on stage that does goofy shit. So obviously that's not the person that should be picking the policy for, the gay community or like it's different, I think, in a way.
I agree with that to an extent, but I think, like if you look at someone whose popularity is grounded in the fact that they're a public speaker, right? Like a podcaster, like Joe Rogan, for example, has more sway than cable news media outlets. He has a bigger viewership than all of the cable news outlets combined, right? So if you consider the power of propaganda, right? Like we all know what the power that Fox News holds over the narrative that threatens democracy, right? So don't you think like someone like Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan, and I'm not lumping those two together, right? Like, because I don't think Joe Rogan's as right wing as people accuse him of being, but the point being, like when he says take ivermectin, people take ivermectin. When
he's got that audience that's going to believe what he says and take it serious. And
even when he,
definitely it's something you should have responsibility over, but responsibility enough to cancel somebody over something they said like many years ago. Like if you took, like let's say Howard Stern, if you took all the times he said the N-word and bunched it together, because there were many times he used it throughout his career. Yeah. If you did the same thing you did to him that you did to Joe Rogan, would there be the same backlash or what?
Well, but what's the thing? Here's the thing. Like, what happened to Joe Rogan? He didn't get canceled. He's still just as popular as ever. He's still got that, multi-million-dollar deal with Spotify. Like, Neil Young took his music down. Like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Like, who are you?
Yeah. Like Howard Stern would probably get a lot of backlash if they did that to him, but then he wouldn't be canceled. But people would want him canceled. I guess that's the whole thing. Like, people want to cancel you over anything now, but doesn't mean you're always going to get canceled. But someone like Roseanne Barr, she got basically canceled for comparing what's her face to the Planet of the Apes. Well,
I've heard her tell her side of the story in long form when she was on Joe Rogan. It makes sense what she was saying, like, and that, like in a ambient haze at 3 a.m, connecting some dots that don't logically connect, and thinking you have a big insight, and like the way she was saying it, she said Planet of the Apes is my favorite movie of all time. Hands down, my favorite movie. I've loved it ever since I was a kid. So, like, the fact that they're apes wasn't even processing in my brain. I wasn't making that connection. I was just talking about dystopia, right?
Yeah. And when I looked at that chick that she compared her to, I see the similarity, but I don't see it because she's a monkey. She could have been similar to something else, like some other type of animal or human being or whatever. And I think that's what it was. It was just because she looked like Vera from Planet of the Apes, just her facial features. Doesn't mean she looks like a monkey. Well, Vera just happens to be a monkey, if that's the right name for the Planet of the Apes lady.
They're apes. Apes are different from monkeys.
Because this chick happens to be African American and this and that, it's like automatically going to be you're comparing it to apes, and
there's a historical precedent for that. That's why that connection is strong.
Well, because
well, I think when you are a comedian, and obviously you can relate to this, is that when you're a comedian, you're constantly thinking of fun. You're just a natural smartass.
Yeah.
So you're constantly thinking of shit to say, whether it's actually funny or not, but that's the way your brain works.
Yeah.
Now, if you're saying that live 24/7 on Twitter, of course you're going to say some shit that doesn't mesh, that you don't have time to work out in your head, whether it's sensitive to other people or not. And
right. That's the thing that non-comedians or normies, like don't understand about the art form is like, in order to be funny, you have to drop the filters, right? The less filters you have between your thoughts and your words, that's where you find, that's how you riff, like it's off the cuff, it's like improv, or like playing jazz or blues, like soloing. It's the same thing. Like if you sit there and think about, well, I'm going to go from this scale with this flare and bend, and then this, if you're trying to pre-think your improvised solo before you do it, you're just gonna like trip all over your fingers, and you're gonna sound like Fred Durst,
yeah.
But so like comedians, like we have to drop those filters, because that's where you find the gold. You're always trying to find that edge, not to cross it to offend people, but to challenge conventional thinking on a subject, right? Like try to turn something on its head to make people go, I didn't think about it that way. That is kind of absurd. You can't do that if you're censored all the time.
And you don't realize something is offensive until you actually say it out loud. In your head, it sounds perfectly logical. Yeah. And then once you say it, you're like, oh, shit, maybe that wasn't such the best choice of words or how to put those together.
Right. No.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, I spend at least 50% of my day with my foot in my mouth.
Yeah.
And that's the only way to do it as a comedian. There's really no other choice.
Right.
You can't figure it out any other way.
Yeah, if you want to watch woke comedy, go for it. But you're going to have a hard time finding the jokes. Like like you might as well watch
boring.
You might as well watch a TED Talk, because that's what it turns into at that point. Like Hannah Gatsby's Nanette, right? It's like there's some funny jokes in there, but a lot of it is just a TED Talk style confessional, which that's a blurry line between like, is this stand-up comedy or is this some hybrid different form of entertainment? Which, if it is, that's fine. Which was funny. That was one of Dave Chappelle's conditions on meeting with the trans communities. Like one of the conditions, you have to admit that Hannah Gatsby's not funny.
But that's what makes him so great, is to be able to come up with that stuff, and not be afraid to say it. That's part of the other thing too, is not being afraid to be who you are.
Well, what happened to Sticks and Stones? Now, like the wrong words, somebody
will sticks.
It's like well, that's the thing. Like super woke, like language treats like language like microaggressions. Like you're assaulting me with your words. Like that's how the debate's being framed. Like if you use this word, it's the same as you committing an act of violence against me. It's psychological violence. It's emotional violence.
People aren't getting enough milk, so their bones are breaking. So that's what it comes down to.
Lack of calcium, right?
Too many babies. Too many babies born with lactose intolerance.
Yeah, that's what it is.
We're blaming the milk community.
Yeah, that and peanut allergies. If you can't eat a peanut, like, maybe you're an evolutionary dead end. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
All right, everybody. So, again, we want to thank Steph Stigma for talking to us, and we really appreciate you. We really appreciate all the insight that you've given us today.
Oh, this is a blast.
Is there anything you want to promote? Do you have any upcoming comedy shows?
Yeah, actually,
are you on tour? Comedy tour?
Not yet. On Wednesday afternoon, like 3:00 Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to be competing. It's the preliminary round for the UK's So You Think You're Funny. And so for this first round, it's going to be a Zoom comedy show. So like anywhere in the world can tune in. I'm going to be posting the link on my Facebook,
cool.
Steph Stigma, And so yeah, like come and support and help me get a paid trip to Scotland this year to perform at Edinburgh.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, I've got some local stuff coming out. My YouTube channel, I've got sketch comedy stuff that I write and sometimes perform, and so I've got new sketch comedy video coming up soon. And yeah, Solar Animals. Check Solar Animals out. The Solar Animals out on Facebook.
Do you have like a main website to where everybody can get all your links, or is it just kind of spread out? Like
right now, it's just Facebook and YouTube.
So yeah, if you guys get a chance, go check out her comedy. Go check out the music is great. The comedy is funny. You'll be laughing your ass off.
Wear a diaper.
And you'll be woke at the same time. So.
Wear a diaper, right? No bathroom breaks.
Right.
So certainly we appreciate you being on the show. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming on. We'll have you on again when you have your next big special in Scotland on the UK.
Yes.
I guess they're always invading our shows, so it's okay for us to invade their shows, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Reverse colonialism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Sounds like a plan.
Well, yeah, thanks so much, guys, for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're welcome on anytime, for sure.
Pleasure.
Anything you have to promote, let us know.
Likewise. Like, well, I just had you, Eric, on Steph's Box, but
you got the Steph Box, the podcast.
Yeah. So next time I'll have to have you both, the Gen X brothers, on.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
For sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
Love that.
All right. Well, thank you, Steph. And yeah, we'll talk at you next time. All right, everybody, go check out her stuff. Go check out her links. Go check out her comedy.
Yes.
Before she coughs to death. And
Steph Stigma is taking over the world.
Yeah. Don't smoke, kids. It's bad for you.